I'm 99 years old. At this age, you don't expect life to surprise you anymore. You think you've already endured the worst of it. War, loss, burials, goodbyes that never felt finished. You assume the body will slowly give up before anything dramatic happens. But life doesn't consult your expectations. Yesterday morning, I still had two hands. By the afternoon, I had one. The accident wasn't poetic. It wasn't symbolic. It was ordinary. A car that didn't stop at the light. A moment too slow. Metal folding into metal. Glass breaking like brittle ice. I remember the sound more than the pain. Then silence. When I woke up in the hospital, I didn't understand at first. There was a heaviness on my right side, then a lightness where something should have been. The doctor didn't rush the explanation. At 99, they speak to you carefully, as if your age makes you fragile. We did what we could. That's the sentence they use when something cannot be undone. I looked down, and for the first time in nearly a century of living, my body felt unfamiliar. I won't describe the wound. The body heals or it doesn't. That's not the hardest part. Pain is honest. Pain tells you exactly what it is. The hardest part came later. It came when I reached for my phone. You would think that at 99, losing a hand would be the tragedy. It wasn't. The tragedy was silence. I have 3 children, raised them myself after their mother passed, worked double shifts when my knees were still strong, skipped meals so they wouldn't, walked them to school in winters so cold the air cut like knives. At 99, you remember these things clearly, not to demand gratitude, just because memory becomes your closest companion. When the nurse asked if she should call someone for me, I said yes. I gave her the numbers. She dialed. No answer. She left messages. Your father has been in an accident. Hours passed. Machines hummed. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Doors opened and closed for other patients. Families arriving. Voices filling rooms. Hands being held. My room stayed quiet. I told myself they were busy. Life is fast now. People have jobs, meetings, responsibilities. I told myself not to judge. But night came, and the chair beside my bed remained empty. You learn something at 99 that younger people still argue with. Excuses are louder than truth. Truth is simple. If someone wants to be there, they come. The next morning, one of my sons finally texted, not called, texted, just heard, "Hope you're okay. Keep me updated. Keep me updated," as if I had caught a cold, as if I had misplaced my glasses, not lost a part of my body, not lain there staring at a ceiling tile, wondering how something could feel so permanent. I stared at that message for a long time, and I realized something that hurt more than the phantom sensation in my missing hand. I had spent decades believing sacrifice guaranteed closeness, that if you gave enough, loved enough, endured enough, people would stay. That belief is comfortable. It's also dangerous, because love does not obligate. It invites, and sometimes it is not returned. By the second day, my friends had also heard, old friends, the few who are still alive. One called, "He is 94. His voice trembled more than mine. "I wish I could come," he said. "My legs won't let me." That call meant more than he will ever know. because effort reveals what words cannot. My children sent another message later that evening. Let us know when you're discharged. Not "we're coming," not "do you need anything," just logistics. That's when I understood. The accident took my hand, but their absence exposed something far deeper. For years, I ignored the small distances, the shorter visits, the distracted conversations, the way I became a background figure in their busy lives. I told myself that was normal. That's what aging is. You slowly fade. But lying in that hospital bed, I saw it clearly. I hadn't faded. I had been placed at the edge, and I had quietly accepted it. The pain of losing my arm was sharp, but it was clean. The pain of realizing you are no longer central to the people you built your life around. That pain is slow. It spreads. It makes you question things you thought were solid. I looked at the empty chair again, and for the first time since the accident, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. Maybe this wasn't a story about loss. Maybe it was a story about seeing, because when everything is taken away except what truly matters, you finally see what was never really yours to begin with. And lying there at 99 years old, with one hand resting on a thin hospital blanket, I asked myself a question I had avoided my entire life. If they never come, who am I without them? That question stayed with me longer than the pain did. Pain has rhythm. It spikes, it fades, it returns. But clarity settles in. On the third day, the doctor told me I would be discharged soon. At your age, recovery is different, he said gently, as if I didn't know that. At 99, you don't pretend you'll bounce back. You just decide whether you'll stand back up. A nurse helped me practice using my left hand. Buttons felt foreign. Spoons felt heavy. Even the act of turning a page felt like learning to walk again. There is something humbling about starting over when you thought you were near the end. I kept waiting for the door to open, for footsteps that sounded familiar, for someone to say, "Dad, we're here." But no one came. On the morning I was discharged, the hospital arranged a car for me, not one of my children. A hospital car. The driver was polite. He asked if I needed help with my seatbelt. I nodded. It's strange how quickly pride dissolves when your body changes. We drove in silence. The city looked the same. People crossing streets, coffee shops opening, life moving forward, as if nothing had happened. I watched them through the window and thought, the world does not pause for your pain, and maybe it never should. When we arrived at my house, the driver carried my small bag to the door. He hesitated before leaving. "Is someone inside with you, sir?" I smiled. "No, but I've been alone before." That wasn't entirely true. I had been physically alone before, but this felt different. This was the first time I understood that loneliness isn't about empty rooms. It's about unmet expectations. I unlocked the door with my left hand. Slowly, the house smelled the same. Old wood, dust, memories. I stepped inside and stood there for a moment. There was no applause for surviving, no embrace waiting in the hallway, just silence. But this time it didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. I set my bag down and walked into the living room. The chair where I used to sit was still there. The photos on the wall hadn't moved. Smiling faces, birthdays, graduations, weddings. Proof that I had mattered once, or maybe I still did, just differently. I sat down carefully, and for the first time since the accident, I allowed myself to cry, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Because the hardest part was not losing my arm. It was realizing that the people I thought would hold me up had already moved on, and that realization could either destroy me or free me. For years I built my identity around being needed, being the strong one, the provider, the father who always showed up, and without that role, I felt uncertain. Who was I, if I was no longer the center of someone else's life? That afternoon, I stared at my remaining hand, wrinkled, shaking slightly, still capable, and something inside me shifted. I had spent decades giving, working, protecting, sacrificing, and I never once asked what I needed from myself. I waited for appreciation, for closeness, for reciprocity. But maybe the mistake wasn't theirs. Maybe it was mine. Maybe I taught them that I would always endure silently, that I would never ask, that I would survive anything without complaint. So they believed me. We teach people how to treat us sometimes without realizing it. I never told my children I needed them. I only showed them I was strong, and strength, when misunderstood, becomes invisibility. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me responsible, not for their choices, but for mine. I walked to the kitchen, slowly, opened a drawer, picked up a pen with my left hand. It felt awkward, unsteady, but I began writing, not a message asking them to come, not a complaint, a letter not to send, to release. I wrote about the accident, about the hospital room, about the empty chair. I wrote about winters walking them to school, about missed meals, about pride. And then I wrote something I had never written before. I forgive you, not because they earned it, but because I deserved peace. Resentment is heavy, heavier than losing a limb, and I had already lost enough weight from my body. I wasn't going to carry bitterness too. As the sun lowered outside my window, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Calm. Not the calm of resignation, the calm of acceptance. My children may never understand what that week meant to me. They may never fully see the weight of their absence, but I finally understood something about love. Love given freely should not be a contract. It should not be a debt waiting to be repaid. It should be a gift that stands on its own. And if it returns, it's a blessing. If it doesn't, it's still yours to keep. That night, I prepared my own dinner, slowly, clumsily. Food tasted different when you make it with one hand, but it still nourished me. And I realized I am still here, at 99 years old, with one arm instead of two, with fewer people around me than I once had, but still here, breathing, thinking, choosing. The accident took my hand. Their silence revealed my expectations, but neither took my dignity, neither took my ability to stand in my own life without waiting for someone else to hold me up. The hardest part wasn't physical pain. It was letting go of the story that said I needed them to feel whole. I don't. It would be beautiful if they showed up, but my peace cannot depend on their timing. Strength at 30 looks like ambition. Strength at 60 looks like resilience. Strength at 99 looks like acceptance. Not bitterness, not revenge. Acceptance. A week later, one of my daughters finally visited. She stood awkwardly near the doorway, apologetic, distracted. I didn't scold her. I didn't recount the silence. I simply said, "I'm glad you're here," and I meant it, because holding grudges at 99 feels like wasting the little time left. She looked at my missing arm and began to cry. I didn't, because by then I had already grieved what needed grieving. The accident forced me to face something I had avoided my entire life. You cannot control who stays. You can only control who you become when they don't. And I chose to become someone lighter, someone who gives without tallying, someone who survives without demanding applause, someone who knows that losing a hand is tragic, but losing yourself to bitterness would be worse. If you're listening to this, maybe your loss looks different. Maybe it's not physical. Maybe it's emotional. Abandonment, silence, disappointment. But the question remains the same. Who are you when no one comes? Are you still kind, still steady, still whole? At 99, I have learnt this. You can lose parts of your body. You can lose people. You can lose roles you once carried with pride. But the one thing you must never lose is yourself, and that is something no accident can take.